All right, thank you for joining our second Be Still Monday session. Tonight's session is going to be led by Andrea Lee. And you should know that this program is brought to you by the Newark Center for Meditative Culture, of which Andrea is a part of. This is being sponsored by the Victoria Foundation, and it's powered in partnership with Greater Newark LISC. LISC standing for Local Initiative Support Corporation, which is a community development nonprofit in the city of Newark, for which I work for. And this is a part of a Neighborhood Mindfulness Initiative series that we are offering. My name is Tanisha Malcolm, Assistant Program Officer with LISC. And we are bringing this mindfulness series during the COVID kind of lull. And we thought we found it most appropriate to offer this during the COVID period because lots of people are being faced with lots of different challenges. So this is just one way to introduce a coping mechanism and allow people to kind of unplug and reset. So our first session was last Monday, and it was focused on the art of remembering, reaching back to move forward. And it was led by Camilla Crawley. It was recorded and is posted on the Newark Center for Meditative Culture's YouTube page. I can share that link in the chat, and I can also send it by email to all of you who register for this evening's session. And as I noted earlier, our instructor tonight is Andrea Lee, and she will focus tonight's discussion on the power of the pause. Just some very basic housekeeping things. We welcome you to share your thoughts during the session via the chat. We'll leave space and opportunity for Q&A if you have any questions, thoughts, or ideas that you'd like to share. If you'd like to directly contact the instructor, we can also make that happen for you. And if anyone is very keenly interested in meditation, if you are a beginner, or if this is new for you, or you're just looking for a new space to practice, and you're looking for some support, the Newark Center for Meditative Culture is offering a free one-on-one mentoring program during this period, and it will happen via email or by phone, whichever works best for you, and they're offering this up until May 31st. So to get more information on that or to receive the application, you can email them, and I'll put the email in the chat. But with that, I will not be leading the discussion because I am here to partake and enjoy just as much as you are. I will ask, main housekeeping purpose, that you please mute unless you have a question that you want to raise up. The chat will be available, and I'll be kind of managing that while Andrea facilitates. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our instructor. Andrea?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tanisha. So welcome. And some of the names and faces look familiar from last week, but if you were able to join us for last week, Monday, can you just give a little wave or a thumbs up, or just to see who was able to join us last week? Great. Nice. So welcome back. And we're talking this evening, talking and practicing about being able to use mindfulness to pause. So the way that I have been thinking about this recently is when so much is going on and when our attention is called to so many different places, whether it's our family, the news, everything in between, how do we pause for ourselves so that we can give more? And so the idea behind this phrase, kind of the power of the pause, is about being grounded and being still And then the actual letters in that word, I thought up of a few ways that we can really bring mindfulness more into our everyday lives. So I'm going to share my screen for just a second, or maybe a little longer than a second, so that you can take a look here. So let me move this here. So the power of pause. So last week when we were with Camilla, she told us and introduced this idea of mindfulness. And the way that I like to think of mindfulness is it's a combination of your intention and then where you are putting your attention. So the intention is, that aspect is about at any given moment recognizing that you want to tune in to that particular moment. And that can be through any of the 5 senses, whether you're tuning into what you're looking at, what you're hearing, maybe it's what you smell, maybe it's something that you taste, and it might be something that you touch or feel. And then they're also tuning into any of the inner or emotional feeling states that you may have at any given point in time. And so those things are happening anyway. So your intention is to pay attention to the things that are around you at any given moment. And I think the beginning of mindfulness is not necessarily to change what is happening, but to acknowledge and be aware of what is happening. And then maybe the next step may be to change it, or sometimes that's not possible. So we change maybe our reaction or our response to what's happening. So I like to show this image here that I've used a couple of times that says mindful or mindful. So it sounds like the same word, but in one of the images, you have a lot of thought process going on, and your mind may be literally full of ideas you have, appointments you need to go to, concerns, worries, joys, and it is a mind that is full. At other points, you might have what it seems like this little puppy is focusing on, which is exactly what is in front of it. And so that's the other mindful. And so throughout the day, I would say I'm mostly in mindful of stuff. And I think that's where a lot of people, a lot of people are. And we're pulled in different ways. And if we hear something, we are pulled away from what we're doing. If we smell something, we're pulled away from what we're doing. But we're not really doing it intentionally. It's more of like a reflex. And then we might come back, but it's still kind of in our mind, just kind of processing around. And so what happens is that it's very hard to get to stillness and grounded if we've got these whirling thoughts at all periods and at all points in time. And the coming to and focusing on the breath is one of the ways that we can kind of transition from mind full of stuff to being mindful. And what I like to think is that if at any point you notice that your mind is full of just thoughts going around, anxieties, whatever you're feeling, you have actually moved into a mindful mindset. Because usually we don't know that our thoughts are running that fast. But when we notice, oh my gosh, I have just been thinking of 10 million different things and my body doesn't feel good and I just need to take a breath, you are already on that path to what we would consider mindful thinking, because your awareness has a little light bulb has gone off and said, wow, I'm aware of all that my mind is doing. And maybe I want to stop doing that for just a little while. I can always go back to that, but maybe for a little while, I just want to be aware of what is happening right now. And in that, you have the opportunity to pause. So the first part of pause is peaceful. So you can start to kind of think, in what ways can I bring intention and attention to some of the things that I'm already doing to allow me to feel more at peace? So before we add any practices, before we change what we might be doing on any given day, what are ways that we can take our attention and intention to things as simple as, I think Camilla gave the example last week of brushing your teeth. That may not be a very peaceful moment for anyone. It might not be a moment that you think about much at all. But what would it be like to bring all of your awareness, your senses, to what you're doing at any given moment? Maybe it's a great meal. Maybe it's preparing that meal. Maybe it's a conversation that you want to be able to really focus in on instead of thinking of the many other things that we have to do. Maybe some of those things that we do already would be more enjoyable if we brought a mindful attitude to it. So that's one thing, and we can, I'd love for you to share any ideas that are coming up, because it might inspire some of our friends here to think, oh yeah, I do that too. And you know, I'm thinking of this now. I don't do it very often right now because I'm working from home, but what could I do to bring peacefulness to my commute? It might be something like paying attention to the times when I'm driving that get me frustrated, and then saying a little affirmation or a prayer or a mantra when those times occur to bring me back. I'm not going to say that I'm never going to get to a red light or that no one's ever going to cut me off, but I'm going to acknowledge that this makes me feel less than peaceful. What can I do to bring my attention to something that is peaceful in the face of what looks like disorder and discomfort. So that's the first part of this pause, is to think about ways to really encourage peacefulness in the things that you are already doing, without even committing to something else or a new kind of meditation. What are you doing already that you can create more peace and space for yourself by bringing your intention and intention to it? So next we have useful. So you'll see I skipped the A and the S here, but useful. I think I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that probably most of us, all of us, are doing things to help and serve others right now and always. And I sure some of you have heard this before, but there is the whole idea about how are you best of use to others if you are not of use to yourself and taking care of yourself? Or how do you put the oxygen mask on someone else when you haven't first tuned into what you need? So this usefulness is about inviting in mindful practices to help you be more useful to yourself and to others. And so when I think of useful, what I found is that when I am paying more attention to the people I'm around and the people I am with, right now it's virtually, but virtually, in person, on the phone, I am exponentially more useful than if I'm distracted. And that's just without changing the situation, but changing how I am interacting in that situation. So for instance, I am a preschool teacher, and so I'm working from home, teaching Zoom classes to 4 and 5-year-olds, and it can get a little intense, and it's a totally new ball game. But what I notice is that they are aware when I'm really listening to them. They are aware when I am looking at them, when I am able to really take a moment and pause and really pay attention, which is hard to do online because a lot of the distractions they don't even see or hear that are just going on around me. But I can tell that they appreciate, and I am serving them better by just taking that moment to just look at them and listen to them. Maybe I'll repeat back something that they say, things that I would do normally in person, but it's even more, I think, necessary with this medium to really be able to connect. And so I'm not necessarily teaching them new things that I wouldn't have taught them in school. I'm not putting on a show for them. I'm being present for them. And that is useful for them. And it's also useful for me because I get to notice a lot more. I notice a lot more. I'm learning actually more about them in some ways using this particular way of connecting. I wouldn't trade it for being in person, but trying to find ways that just by being more intentional in my actions and and being present, finding ways that I can be more of service. So that's another thing maybe to think of in our daily lives, whether we are working from home, whether we are working outside of our home, whether we are serving our kids, our family, is how does our attention, again, how do we use attention and intention to be of better service to all those who we care about and to ourselves. And then this last one we have here is easeful. So easeful, I think of that as ways to make things either less complicated, ways to kind of simplify the things that, again, we already do, to make life flow more easily when the things around us don't feel like they're flowing in a very positive way at all. So for me, one of the things that I did to bring ease into my life was I limit the amount of time I spend looking at the news, because once I became more mindful of how I felt after maybe looking at a half an hour or more, scrolling through headlines, hearing different stories and reports, I tuned into how I was feeling. And there was a lot of fear for me. And I think knowledge is power. So knowing what we need to know, getting the information is extremely important. But it's also good to be mindful of what that knowledge does to us. And it may be totally different for someone else. But for me, I noticed it was causing a lot of dis-ease to be going through my phone scrolling headlines every 5 minutes to see if anything changed. So for me to bring some more ease into my life, I had to limit that, either to a particular time, or I would have another loved one tell me, you let me know when something happens that you think I really need to be informed about. You give me a check-in, you let me know if the curfew changed, if something else is different or altered. So I feel like I know what's going on without it having such a negative effect on how I was just operating and what my mind was doing. And another part of easeful is working with the body, so that I feel like I'm either standing a lot or sitting a lot. Not a whole lot of movement. It's like either I'm standing in line or I'm sitting at the computer. And so some of the easefulness can be brought into your routine by, again, pausing wherever you are, and maybe it's after a certain amount of time sitting or standing that you intentionally move your body in ways that make it feel good. And so there's a lot that you can do just sitting. So we could even give some of it a little try. I do yoga and teach yoga, but I'm looking back now and thinking, wow, chair yoga could really come in handy for a lot of people right now. You don't need a mat. You don't need any kind of gear. You have your body and you're sitting. And so you can do things like a lot of tension, maybe in the neck and the shoulders. So something as simple as raising up your shoulders. And maybe you do that as you inhale. And then as you exhale, bringing the shoulders back down. So if you want, you can try it. To inhale and bring the shoulders up towards the ears, and exhale and release them back down. And again, inhale, bringing the shoulders up, and exhale to release the shoulders down. And then you can look up towards the ceiling, and then slowly look down towards the floor. And then inhale, look up towards the ceiling, and exhale, look down towards the floor. And then neck rolls are great. So just slowly allow the head and the neck to roll in a circle in one direction. And then to reverse and roll in the other direction. And so movements are a way to release some of the stress that we may be holding in our body during times when we might not have thought to before. So I may even set an alarm to go off in the middle of a Zoom meeting I'm having, just to remind me to move. And once I have that as kind of my backup, eventually it just becomes more routine because the body starts to look forward to it. And so you may not need an alarm, but if it's a really busy day, that reminder can really help, because again, if the mind is going, we may not be tuning into the fact that pausing would be really helpful for us. So I am going to stop sharing the screen now so that we can better see each other. And one of the things that I have been thinking about that has been helping me recently is the serenity prayer. And this is something that I feel reminds me that there are things that are out of my control. There are things that with intention and attention that I can make a difference about, and reminds me to focus my efforts on the things that I can. So I'm going to read that prayer right now. It says, "Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." So I am feeling like there's a lot going on that I feel that I cannot change. I may really want to change, but I feel like I cannot change at this particular moment. But instead of feeling helpless about it, I try to be mindful of, well, what can I change? Maybe I can't change a number of different things, but I can change maybe how I respond to someone or how I respond to a situation. Maybe I can change how I react to something. Maybe I can not beat myself up so much. Maybe I can be more compassionate with myself and with others during a really hard time. Those are things that I do have some agency about. And so that, and again, that wisdom is important because sometimes it's hard to tell. And sometimes we put a lot of effort behind things that we cannot change. Maybe it's the way somebody else behaves. And we try and we try and we try, and we get frustrated and we get overwhelmed, and that person doesn't change. And the flip side is, well, how can maybe I change how I react to whatever is happening? And then that is where I'm going to put my energy. And so I would love to know from the folks who are on, what are some practices that you already do that you could bring a sense of peace or ease or usefulness if done with mindfulness? Are there things that you can think of already that would be almost like putting a little flagpole, a little peace flagpole throughout your day? Like, this is a time when I know I can bring more, I can count on to bring more peace into my life. Or this is a practice that I already do that I can use to bring more ease into my life. So please feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to share, if you would like to type something into the chat, then those can be read also. Because
Bubble
again,
bath.
I think,
Yes,
mhm.
a nice warm bubble bath. You can think about that at any time you get stressed out during the day. I got something to look forward to.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. Nice warm bubble bath. I could go for that right now.
Yeah,
Natasha,
and throw a little Epsom sauce in there.
nice.
Yeah.
Natasha shared tea time and daily walks.
Yes.
Ooh, I like that. Yep. I got my cup. Nice.
I
Thank
say
you.
massages.
Yes. Yes, that is really especially good for the any tension and just to get energy moving
Right.
in the body. Yeah, thank you.
One of the things I do is I started a gratitude journal because I like to write, and I'm finding recently that it's helping me to, if I can't verbalize what I'm feeling, that at least I can write it down. So I don't set any restrictions on myself when I'm writing. You know, I just let it flow, and I just think of the little things that I'm grateful for as well as the larger things, especially in this time of COVID. We have to find some of the special moments that that we can treasure. So a lot of it, I guess, is like self-reflection, and so I bring that out in writing.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Susan. Yeah. The gratitude is really a pretty powerful practice, and it really can be the small things, the larger things, and then just the act of doing it. It's almost like it's almost like a magnet. More things, I feel like, start to become evident. You start even noticing more of the things, like, oh yes, that's really dear to me, or special, or I'm really grateful for that, because all of a sudden you're noticing more, and just by tuning into it, and so you're seeing more.
Yeah. And then I think when you write it and you go back to what you previously wrote, like maybe 3 days down the line, you're like, what can I do? And then you go back and read your journal, and then you can recall, like, oh, wow, that was something that I may have forgotten that I'm really grateful for.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see also deep breathing. Yes. Deep breathing. I love that, because I tell people, if you take it wherever you go. It's with you. There is, I think, an idea which is mostly kind of commercial based, that mindfulness means you have to buy stuff. Like, you have to buy stuff in order to be mindful, or do certain practices. You need a cushion, you need the right clothes to be mindful, you need to do this. Breath. If you've got that, that is there you go. Yeah, it might be nice to have a cushion at some point, but the cushion is to give you enough comfort and stability to pay attention to the breath. If the breath weren't there, the cushion wouldn't help. So it's really, thank you for mentioning the Natasha, the deep breathing and that's something with the deep breathing. There's so many different ways you can do or practice deep breathing, but one way is to have your exhale be longer and extended a little bit more than your inhale. So the kind of reason for that is that when it's during the exhale that the parasympathetic nervous system really gets activated. And that part of your nervous system is what you would call your rest and digest. It's the one that is more kind of calming, as opposed to the sympathetic nervous system, which is more the fight or flight. So when you have, maybe you inhale for 3 counts and maybe you exhale for 5 or 6. So that longer exhale really activates the rest, digest, and that overall more calm, peaceful state of mind. And then I think Camilla also brought it up last week that often we are breathing, mainly we feel it in our chest, in our upper body. But with that deep breathing, if we can bring it all the way down to the abdomen and really feeling the oxygen expand all the way down in the belly, that also allows us to fill up with more energy, because that oxygen is the energy, and we provide more room for it to flow in our body if we let it go all the way down into the belly and then slowly allow it to exit and exhale. So that's definitely anytime, any place. So thank you for sharing that. So those are things that maybe we can, if we're not already doing it, maybe there are things that you heard from another person that you might want to try. But I think there's a lot that you can do with what you already have. And I think that's the biggest thing to kind of get across right now, because I know that one of the feelings that I have, or can start to have during the last few months, is a feeling of insecurity.
Yeah.
And a feeling of either I don't have what I need to protect me and my family, or there's uncertainty, and this feeling like, well, I don't have what I need. And I think some of these practices are really to allow us to turn inward enough to see how much we have already in just being here now, and how we can lean on that in times when it feels like what is outside is not supporting us. And then from that strength, we can share that with others. And so that is really what I wish and hope for all of you. And I really appreciate you all coming this evening. And we will have another session next Monday. I think Camilla and I will be doing that together. And so hope to see a number of you, and even follow up in here and see if any particular things have helped, if there are questions that you have. Certainly we're really here to serve the community, and we are part of the community too. So I It's very important for us, I think, to know what we have in each one of us that can help us in times when it seems very unsteady. So thank you very much. I don't know if if Tanisha, I don't know if you have any closing comments or if anyone has questions or.
Yeah. So, well, thank you, Andrea. This was really insightful and helpful. We will open it up for questions. If anyone has any, they can raise them now. You can say them out loud. You can unmute yourself and say it out loud. Or if you want to use the chat box, I'm happy to read out your questions and field them to Andrea to facilitate that conversation. If you'd like to email either the Newark Center for Meditative Culture, or if you have additional questions for Andrea and you'd prefer to contact her directly, Andrea, would you mind sharing an email address for where people can reach you in the chat? But we open it up to questions. If you have any, feel free to. Thank you for sharing in the chat. Andrea.lee94@icloud.com. If there are no questions, which there don't see any hands raised or anything like that. So if there are no questions, we just want to thank you all again for joining. This is week 2 of this Neighborhood Mindfulness Series, again, sponsored by the Victoria Foundation, powered by Greater Newark LISC and the Thrive in Neighborhood Initiative program, community building efforts, presented by and led by the Newark Center for Meditative Culture. We have a very short evaluation feedback survey that we send to you all after this. I also added it to the chat. We'd really love your feedback, your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions, your recommendations. We encourage you to share these sessions, the recorded versions, as well as upcoming sessions with your network, people in your neighborhood, your friends, your family, or someone that you think could just really benefit from such a conversation. This is 100% free to the community, and we want to make sure it reaches all people everywhere, because there's really some powerful information and content as a part of these sessions. So unless there's anything else to share, we are grateful for your participation and we look forward to seeing you next Monday. Please be sure to complete your evaluation and look forward to seeing you again. Have a good evening, all.
You
Thank you. Be well.